Now, I need to set this up a little bit because Charles Mingus was terribly misunderstood. In today's parlance, Mingus would probably carry a diagnosis. He would probably be diagnosed as bipolar because he really was a madman. He would stop the band in the middle of a set and pick up a chair and throw it at somebody that didn't like what they were playing. He would get in fights with musicians while they're playing gigs because they didn't play the music right. But when he had it right, and when that music played right, there was perhaps for me nobody greater, nobody who communicated to me more clear than the musical compositions of Charles Mingus. So Charles Mingus is probably my all-time favorite, even though I have a lot of them, and this one is dedicated to him. Nogales, Arizona, a crossroads for 1,000 years, a migratory path and trade route, whose scent of walnuts overpowers more ethereal smells, of monks and armor-clad conquistadors, sniffing out Cibola and her 7 golden cities, leaving in their wake a fragrance suggestive of mole, a cloying sepulchral smell of crumbling mission adobe, the effluvia of Ignatius of Loyola and Dominic of France, or spectral Chiricahuas hunting, not buffalo, but fat gringo cattle, and more recently, the salt and urea, ash and albumins, mucus flocks, and the peculiarly Chinese and English reek of Harriet Mingus's birth juices. Charles Mingus Jr., turbulent force of nature, announced himself with a violent birth and presaging fetal scream that echoed off the steep Sonora mountain ranges, obscuring the army camp overlaid on an inhospitable desert, telescoping the rest of his mother's life to a few short months, and foretelling the angry, self-parodic, incandescent, hypersexual persona, foretelling the scintillating music that was to come. For it was all about the music, and the music prepared the vessel, set the stage, set the life apart for its special use and purpose, made it holy. Not the flagellating spirit-numbing holiness of plain down-home half-Indian Mamie Carson, who flew into the breach left by his mother, who set up housekeeping and did loud old devil music in a house, who sought to stop his ears against seductive jazz and blues, but wouldn't shield him from the brutal abusive father, from the hurtful East 108th Street, slowly turning black neighborhood preachments and perorations that branded him a half-yellow shit-brown motherfucker and taught him that loving was an ongoing bipolar episode of anguish and pain. But a holiness derived from music that was life itself, that justified and claimed him for its own, that invested in him sanctity in musical act as well as in habit, and he in turn claimed it as his beginning and the ends toward which he daily unflinchingly reaching for the classical strains of Stravinsky and later the cacophonic harmonies of Schoenberg, stealing forbidden radio sound bites of Ellington, and immersing in the baptismal waters of rapturous Pentecostal prosody, in the sacred sexual undertones of a sanctified stride left hand, drawing him nearer his God in coitus and cloture, the God of butt-shaking Christian possession, boiling like old Cabernet in a cauldron, reduced to thick, syrupy composition strained through the coarse sieve of his genius. And Mingus increased, touching the likes of Satchmo, Hamp, Norvo, taking much from them, leaving them with much more, getting hired and fired by the Duke, flying high with Bird, Diz, Bud, and Max, bickering with Miles until conflating his own disparate ideas, funneling them through ever-interchanging accomplished players into a cohesive improvisational machine, a compositional grist-turned-star mill generating cataclysmic creative explosions, the accretion of genuine genius onto the surface of jazz, exposing bebop as a transient cul-de-sac, the growth of a massive talent that gravitationally attracted more talent, sucked it into a close binary of genius and madness, where ideas proliferated, where ideas were violently nurtured and drawn out, where mania ruled the bandstand, kept time and trailblazed, tightening the underlying beat to allow rhythmic flexibility up top, filling the void between improvisation and orchestration, stirring up the turbulent fervency, taking it up to ever higher emotional levels of peak experience and no bullshit soul bearing. The music filled his soul, his very cells, but could only feign to replace the progressive loss of nerve cells in the brain and spine that soon confined him to a wheelchair. Unable to write his music down or compose at the keyboards, he sang his last music into a tape recorder. Neither ALS, perversity, nor being black in America could keep him from composing over the blues one last time, his faint, failing voice issuing forth a feathery adumbration of his life song, only hinting at the strength, beauty, and glory of his great soul. And then he left us, had the grace to slip away under a waning crescent moon in June in Cuernavaca, but not before arranging to have his ashes spread upon the Ganges, passing into the background noise like the music midnight makes.